Hi, this is Ingrid. I'm with Healing Arts NYC. I'm a practitioner here at Healing Arts, and today we're going to do a workshop on Nutrition Basics 101 on spring cleaning in the kitchen. Um, I'm new to Facebook Live, and I made a PowerPoint presentation for this, thinking that I could do a share screen on it, a split screen, but I'm having some technical difficulties with it. So for now, I only have my slideshow for you. So here's a little picture of me. I'm Ingrid, and again, welcome to my workshop. I'm a practitioner at Healing Arts NYC, and today we're going to be talking about some foods to keep in your pantry, some to toss away, how to restock your pantry, what to put in your pantry, and some hidden toxicities in your kitchen. What's really interesting is that I planned this workshop about a month ago before COVID-19 came upon us. And so I think it's still pretty relevant as to what we're doing today, as what we need to talk about. So we're spending more time than ever in our kitchens, and we're not able to go out as often. So it's really important to start stocking up on the things that we need that really will help keep our bodies healthy, replenished and nourished during these times. Okay, so let's talk about some pantry staples. Having the right pantry staples makes easy to eat healthy, easy to make healthy decisions too. So each ingredient is important to creating your nutritious meals. So I know a lot of us will go to the supermarket, we'll buy all of our produce, organic as much as possible. We'll pick colorful vegetables. We'll get all the great things to drink. Our nice water, our great grass-fed meats, but then we have to think about what we're putting it with it. What oils are we cooking with it? When we're baking these great muffins, like what kind of sugars are we using? Or even in your coffee or in your daily teas, in your daily smoothies. Everything we eat is a layer, and all these layers really help create a nutritious meal. So these are a few of the things that are pantry staples that I have, and I think everyone else should have. So some nuts and seeds, beans and legumes, grains, oils. We'll talk about sweeteners, especially with the oils, going back up to oils. We'll talk about what kind of oils to cook with and which ones to avoid using. What kind of sweeteners to have in your pantry, sugar. Some people say sugar is sugar, but there are different types of sugars, and different types of sugars affect our bodies differently. What type of flours, baking agents? Some people have questions about, like, can I use baking soda? What kind of baking powder do I buy? We'll go ahead and cover that today. Some spices, really makes our food exciting. How to properly store them and the shelf life of them, and even processed and packaged foods. So things like pastas, condiments, what else? Like vinegars, or even I've got like pastas in my pantry. What else do I have in mind? Some packaged foods, some crackers. How to buy healthy processed foods, packaged foods. Okay, so go ahead and jump into nuts. So you're doing nuts. Nuts are a great source of protein, fat, fiber, minerals, and vitamins. Raw nuts are the most nutritious versus roasted. So again, when you start buying your nuts, you want to go ahead and make sure that you're getting raw nuts. There's always an option. You'll see roasted and salted, and then you'll have raw. Raw are nuts that have yet to be toasted. So the thing about getting raw nuts is that you actually get almost all of their nutritional values. In the roasting process, it changes a little bit of the nutritional composition of the nuts. So to get the most nutrients, raw is best. Some examples of nuts: you can get some raw almonds, raw cashews, raw walnuts, raw pecans, macadamia in Brazil, hazelnuts. Some other great things about nuts is that they make really great alternatives for milk, flour, and butters. Also for seeds, so like almond milk, almond flour, almond butter is a great example. So let's talk about seeds now. So another great thing to have in your pantry are seeds. Now, seeds are another really great source of um, protein and healthy fats for our bodies. Nuts is the same. So some people, they may not be able to digest nuts, and some people may not be able to digest seeds, and some may not be able to have both. But if you can't have one or the other, it's a really nice option because especially some people who are vegetarian, these two are great sources of protein. So some examples of seeds are pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, sunflower seeds, and hemp seeds. So what I love to do is I love using flax seeds, and I love having sunflower butter, and I really love hemp milk. These are all great alternatives for dairy, again, for flour and milk and butters. So, little known fact, if you are trying to go eggless, flaxseed meal makes a great egg alternative when you're baking. So, the ratio for that is 1 tablespoon of flaxseed meal to 1 to 2 tablespoons of water equals 1 egg. Okay. The next that we're going to go through is beans. Beans, you go into the grocery store and you'll see two types of beans, usually right next to each other. You'll see the bagged dried beans and the canned beans. Between the two, the best to store in your pantry would be the dry beans. If you buy canned beans, they are a little bit easier. However, what you're going to do is you're going to actually not only just buy the ease of it, but also the higher sodium and the exposure to tin and aluminum toxicity. So with the canned beans, the longer the beans are sitting in the cans, it's actually absorbing some of the aluminum and the tin into the actual bean. So when you buy dry beans, the great thing is they have a great shelf life. So you can store them as long as you can and as long as you want and as many as you want too. So with beans, similar to nuts and seeds, it's really highly recommended that you soak them. Okay, so soaking raw nuts, seeds, and beans allows us to properly absorb these nutrient-dense goodies. And we'll go ahead and a little bit down the road, we'll explain how to soak these things. The last thing in terms of healthy carbohydrates to have in your pantry are grains. Grains are nutritious carbohydrates that are high in fiber, B vitamins, antioxidants, and proteins. Grains also provide a gluten-free alternative. So some examples of grains are buckwheat, quinoa, steel-cut oats, white rice, brown rice, teff, millet, rye, spelt, and corn. So with beans, seeds, nuts, and grains, as you create your meal, your daily meals, these are actually not only just pantry staples, but sometimes for me and my meals, they tend to be my source of carbohydrates. So it is really important, if you're eating these daily, to have the right ones. So I want to let you know, sometimes oats, most of these are gluten. All of these, the examples that I listed them below are all gluten-free options. And so some people ask, well, are oats gluten-free? And the answer is, yeah, technically oats are gluten-free. But due to the processing facilities that these oats go through, they are most likely exposed to wheat or gluten. So if you are gluten sensitive or gluten free, it is important to look at the packaging that says gluten free oats. Okay, so you mentioned about with nuts, beans, and seeds is important. So let's talk about why it's important. So there are anti-nutrients on these beans, nuts, and seeds. So these anti-nutrients are phytic acids, lectins, and other enzyme inhibitors that can make it really hard for us to digest these. So these anti-nutrients actually are there to help protect the nuts and the seeds from its outside conditions and the elements. But for us, it's not so good because it really hinders our digestive process. So when you soak them, it actually creates the same conditions of germination, and it allows the seeds, nuts, and beans to release the anti-nutrients. So when we release these anti-nutrients, our bodies are able to fully absorb all the nutrients that these nuts, beans, and seeds have. So next is, how do you soak these things? And what you soak is just water, unrefined sea salt, a little lemon, or apple cider vinegar. So with nuts and seeds, what you want to do is you want to have a 1-to-2 ratio. If you're going to do 1 cup of seeds, you want 2 cups of water. Okay, and warm water works best. And then if you're going to do with nuts and seeds, you're going to do 1 cup of seeds, 2 cups of warm water, and 1 tablespoon of unrefined sea salt. Hard nuts, it's ideal to soak them from 8 to 12 hours. And with soft nuts, you want to go and soak them for 2 hours. Okay, and when you're done soaking them, just go ahead and rinse them off, drain the water and go ahead and rinse it off, and then you're welcome to start eating them. With nuts, you want to soak them for 2 hours. Okay, and with the seeds, you want to soak them from 2 to 6 hours. Okay, so some people like to dehydrate, meaning taking the water out of the soaked seeds. You're absolutely welcome to do this. It's not, it doesn't mean you have to in order to eat them. But if you just want like a really crunchy nut or a really crunchy sesame seed toast, dehydration is best. If you have a dehydrator, go ahead and put it into the settings, the lowest one, and you want to go ahead and dehydrate them for about 12 to 24 hours. If you don't have a dehydrator like myself, the easiest thing to go ahead and rinse and dry your nuts off or your seeds, and just go ahead and put them on a sheet pan and put your oven at the lowest temperature and bake for 12 to 24 hours. Okay, so how do we cook beans? Again, the ratio is pretty much similar. 1 cup of beans to 2 parts water. Again, you're going to use warm water. And with beans, you want to go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of either fresh lemon juice or apple cider vinegar. Okay, and when you pick your apple cider vinegar, make sure it's the raw or the organic type. And go ahead and soak them for 18 to 24 hours. So with the beans, you're going to check them every 6 hours because you want to go ahead and rinse it off and re-soak it. Again, it's just part of the process of releasing the anti-nutrients. So go ahead and after 6 hours soaking, you want to drain it, rinse it, and then re-soak them. Okay, and then with beans, you don't need to dehydrate them because you're just going to go ahead and put them in your pot and cook and eat them. Okay, so let's talk about oils. This is my favorite part because I think everybody uses oils to cook. Everybody uses oils. Oils are in everything. And they're great. Oils give us like a layer of, we get our omegas from there, our omega-3s and our omega-6s from oils. But there are a lot of different types of oils that we all cook with. And there tends to be a lot of conflicting information. So for this workshop, I want to make it as simple as possible. So in one section, I have the yeses and one I have the nos. So the things you want to stay away from, anything that says trans-saturated, hydrogenated oils, polyhydrogenated oils, sorry, I'm having a hard time saying that today, equals MGO. And GMOs. And what GMOs stands for is genetically modified oils. So if you go down the supermarket aisle of the oils and you see any oils in a clear plastic bottle, that's pretty much an indication that those are hydrogenated or polyhydrogenated oils, meaning they were genetically modified. So with oils, oils are living things. They're organic matter. So with all organic matter, there is a lifespan. And the best things to do with oils is to store them in glass in a cool and dark area. Right. And so when you go to the supermarket, if it's not in a glass or in a dark glass, there is exposure to the light, and it's just sitting on the shelf. And you wonder, how is it able to be usable while being on the shelf? And the answer is because they've genetically modified them in order to make them more cheaper to make, longer, easier to use. And so some hydrogenated oils Our GMN oils are vegetable oil, canola oil, corn oil, sunflower seed oil, soybean oil. Okay. If you notice on corn oil, sunflower oil, and soybean oil, I put a little asterisk on those because I do want to say that yes, these are technically could be considered healthy fatty acids. And again, due to the production of these grains, a lot of corn in America is genetically modified, so are soybeans. Um, they could be really considered a GMO. So you're not really eating what you think you really are eating. The oil really isn't 100% corn oil. And with sunflower seeds, if you go in the mass market, they are refined. So if you want to use any of these oils, and if you feel compelled to use any of these oils with the asterisks on it, you want to go ahead and look for the label that on the bottom that says expeller pressed, meaning they're unrefined. Okay. So what's the harm in eating these trans fats? We talk about canola oil. I know some people say, well, vegetable oil is the greatest thing because it doesn't taste anything, and it has a great high smoking point, which is true. But because they are genetically modified, when we ingest these, our bodies have no idea what to do with them. Our bodies aren't meant to eat chemicals. And when our bodies see chemicals, they react, and they tend to react in a negative way. So things like heart disease, high cholesterol tends to be from a really could be just like you could be eating a little but over a long period of time of these oils, or it could just be you're simply eating too many of these unhealthy oils. So with that, I want to go and talk about the good oils. Okay. So the good oils, which are the yeses, yay, you want to look for monounsaturated, polyunsaturated fat, and saturated fat. Okay. Just like I mentioned earlier, these oils are not genetically modified. And these oils, the chemical makeup of them naturally, our bodies actually know what to do with. And we have a great time. We know how to absorb the nutrients, we know how to break it down, and it actually benefits our bodies. So I divided these into two different smoking points because, like I said earlier, these are organic matters, right? And you have to treat them with, in order to get the most nutritional availability from these oils. You want to respect the conditions they need to be in order to actually reap the benefits nutritionally. So low smoking oils are walnut oil, flaxseed oil, wheat germ oil. Okay. Usually low smoke, meaning that you don't really need to, they're not ideal for frying. Maybe like a quick stir fry would be great, or even baking might be too much for them. If you're baking with these oils, um, nothing will happen to your bake, but in terms of reaping the nutritional benefits from them, you probably won't be getting any of it. Okay. So the high to medium smoke point oils are EV, which is extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, grass-fed butter, ghee, sesame seed oil, grapeseed oil. These are some examples. With the sesame seed oil, if you go to the supermarket, you'll notice that there tends to be two different types. There'll be one that says toasted sesame seed oil, and then there will be one that says just sesame seed oil. The ones that are labeled sesame seed oil are ones that are untoasted. So the non-toasted ones are actually better, just similar to even the nuts, right? The pre-toasted nuts or roasted nuts, you're not going to get the same amount of nutritional benefits from rather eating raw nuts. It's the same with sesame seed oil. So sesame seed oil, if you are going to be eating and using it, the best is to get non-toasted organic. Okay. Like I mentioned earlier, the best place to store them in your pantry, in your kitchen, is in a cool and dark area, and the refrigerator is best. Oils do go rancid again, so treat them with care, please. So next, we're going to be talking about sweeteners. So what type of sugar should you be storing in your pantry? At Healing Arts, we like to say avoid refined white sugar. The greatest example of what white sugar really is um, if you've noticed throughout the whole workshop and this presentation, I've talked about how it's so important to eat things in their, get things at their raw state to get the most nutritional value from everything that we're eating. And it's similar with sugar. There are nutritional benefits from sugar and sweeteners, but with the refined white sugar, you aren't getting anything but the taste because of the process it's gone through. The example again I like to give is back in the day, sugar used to come from sugar cane. Over the years, the demand for sugar has gone up. We put sugar in everything. And so in terms of the product, how many sugarcane fields are there versus the demand for sugar? We've had to figure out the sugar industry has had to figure out how to supply the demand of sugar. So they use beets now to actually make white refined sugar. And if you look at a beet, it's very purple, very deep purple red and juicy. And when you go buy a bag of unrefined sugar, it looks pure white. So, I always ask myself, how did they get this beet red, juicy beet um, that is so dark in pigmentation? And how do they get this white refined sugar from it that's not white? You can only imagine the processing that's involved. So again, once you strip anything away from its natural nutritional value, our body doesn't really either have need for or doesn't know what to do with it, and it just really doesn't really have any nutritional benefit for us. So that's why avoiding all white refined sugar is absolutely ideal. Okay, so what are some natural sweeteners that we have? So some sweeteners that you can substitute for your sweet tooth or for your baking and your cooking, real maple syrup. So there is a thing called a real maple syrup. And sometimes it doesn't say real maple syrup, but it will definitely say, give it a grade. You'll see grade A maple syrup or grade B maple syrup, and you'll know that is real maple syrup. And most of the time, real maple syrup is organic. The next is raw honey. Okay, again, it's really important. Raw honey versus regular honey. This is where I actually like to buy as local as possible, because when you're getting it from your local farmers market or CSA, you know that the honey that they write is just straight out of the beehive. But if you're going with big brand names, you want to make sure it says raw. Again, going back to the idea of raw nuts versus toasted and roasted nuts, it's about really getting the most nutritional value out of it. The next is cane sugar. Cane sugar comes in a lot of different forms. It comes in, little natural, like granulated. It comes in liquid, but I really love using the granulated ones. Coconut sugar. Coconut sugar is really nice because because these natural sweeteners are less processed and less refined, so we can actually absorb the nutritional value. And what that also means on our body is that it takes longer for our bodies to break it down. So in terms of spiking up your blood sugar level isn't going to immediately go up and come crashing down like 5 to 10 minutes later. It's actually your body is like slowly absorbing it, because not just the sweetness that your body is tasting, your taste buds are tasting, but your body is extracting and breaking down the nutrients that it comes with it. And coconut sugar is a great example of one of these sweeteners. Stevia is great. Monk fruit, dates. If you are feeling like I don't want to use any added sugar, but you do need something sweet, adding dates to a meal is perfect. Cutting them, slicing them, baking them in. It's a great natural sweetener. Agave is another one. A molasses. So when you buy your molasses, you want to make sure it says blackstrap, because that's what, again, has the most nutritional value. Molasses, of the molasses. So artificial sweeteners. So what does refined sugar come in too? There comes in a lot of different names and a lot of different guises. And I listed them as artificial sweeteners on the right. So dextrose, fructose, corn syrup, corn syrup solids, glucose, sucrose, concentrated fruit juice, brown sugar. Brown sugar is really white sugar, white refined sugar with molasses added to it, barley malt, malt syrup, malt extract, maltodextrin. These are all different types of artificial sweeteners, or refined sweeteners, I should say, um, that are in our hidden foods, if you ever read the labels and start reading the ingredients, if we happen to see any of these, this most likely are sweeteners. um, Good question. Someone once asked me, what about tapioca syrup? What about brown rice syrup? So these are also types of, even date syrup. This is also types of refined sugar because it has been processed, because anything that's not in its natural state is considered processed. However, even though these are processed, it does, your body, again, it goes back to absorbing the nutrients, or what kind of nutritional availability does it have. It has a lot more than just white refined sugar. Okay. So let's talk about baking agents, flour, and salt. Because I know on my pantry, growing up, we had a big jar that was flour, just for salt, just for sugar. Um, and here at Healing Arts, we like to say gluten-free flours are the best. You know, gluten, caffeine, alcohol, and sugar do cause inflammation in the body. So the question is, what can I eat? How can I bake? What can I bake if I can't use whole wheat, white wheat flour? And there's a lot of great alternatives now out there. There's buckwheat flour, almond flour, oat flour, rice flour, tapioca flour, sorghum flour, cassava, teff, corn. There's also quinoa flour. If you peruse a lot of the grocery stores now, as you go through the baked goods aisle, one side of the aisle you'll have all the wheat and white flours, and then on the other side, on the other end, you'll start seeing the alternatives. And so I'll share with you, when I started to bake gluten-free, I just assumed it was a cup for cup ratio. If the recipe asked for 1 cup of white flour, I would just substitute with 1 cup of almond flour. And I learned pretty quickly that that's not always the case. That doesn't always give me the best results. So if you're thinking that you want to start baking gluten-free, there's a lot of great gluten-free flour mixes out there. And again, these are all available at the supermarkets or even online. Some brands that I like are Pamela's, Cup for Cup, Bob's Mills, Anthony's, King Arthur's gluten-free, which is great. Caputo's Double Zero gluten-free flour is awesome. I like to make my pizza doughs with them at Arrowhead Mills. My favorite one, just on a side note, I happen to really like Pamela's and Anthony's. Okay. Um, so now that you have your flour, and you want to start baking, the question we always get, baking agents, baking soda and baking powder. What's the difference? There are differences. So baking soda is made up of mineralized sodium bicarbonate. Okay. And with baking soda, all types of baking soda are safe. The really expensive ones to the ones that are just made from the store brand, they're all safe. Okay. And now there's baking powder. So baking powder is actually a mixture, and it's mixed with baking soda. And some people like to make it with cream of tartar, but there's also different types of agents in it. Leavening agents included with baking soda in the mix. So this is the one that you should be looking for, that says aluminum free and gluten free. Okay. So again, baking powder is the one that you should be looking for, aluminum and gluten free options. Okay. And also, on a side note, if you're watching your sodium intake, if you're baking and it calls for baking soda and baking powder and salt, you want to note that, adding baking soda is already a form of sodium into your recipe. And then adding baking powder is adding additional sodium on top of the salt. So just take note of like if you're watching your sodium intake, that could be like an area where you're getting like more sodium than you think you should be or could be. Okay. And so that leads to salt. You know what type of salt to have. We talked about the sweetness with the sugar. So let's talk about with the salty with the salt. So salt is a I love salt because it adds taste to everything. So again, it's about getting the foods and our pantry staples that give us the most nutritional availability. And with salt, you want to go ahead and get unrefined sea salt. Himalayan sea salt is the best. That's the pink sea salt that you get. Next would be Celtic sea salt, unrefined sea salt. Another a good brand of sea salt that's unrefined is Malden sea salt. And Malden's great because it comes in a lot of different types of sizes. If you're like a big baker or cook or chef, they have really great sea salt, a variety of sea salts. Okay, oops. So the last one is spices. Okay. So spices are always in the pantry. I keep my spices in my I consider my spices part of my pantry even though they're not they're not really in a pantry, but they're on my spice rack. But I know that they are definitely something that I have that really, really helps with my flavor profiling of my foods that I eat, my recipes, and especially, once you start cooking your own food, you're going to realize, and you start making your own food, you're going to realize all these like foods mm, when you go out to buy food or if you buy packaged food, the flavors that they're adding are like chemical based. But when you're cooking for yourself, you can realize, these chemicals are really based on flavor profiles of natural spices. And natural spices, everyone's safe to eat them. They're actually made from herbs. So, as we know, like in plant medicine, herbs are extremely nourishing and beneficial for our bodies. So one thing that I do know for myself when it comes to spices that I could just buy a spice and just like leave it on my rack for, I don't know. I think it's just a few years, but it really could just be sitting there for 5 years. So in terms of the shelf life of spices, you want to just make sure you're watching out for them. So with ground spices, ground spices are the ones that look like powder. The shelf life for those are 3 to 4 years. With whole spices, things like cinnamon, whole cloves, whole fennel seeds, mustard seeds, um, cumin seeds, the shelf life for those are 4 years. And dried leafy herbs like oregano, tarragon, sage, you want to go ahead and make sure that you have them stored in a nice place for 1 to 3 years. Mm. My favorite thing to do is actually to use whole spices. It's really easy to go ahead and make your own spice blends. When you go to the supermarket, you could be buying like something you could buy you or even check your own pantry if you have something like oregano and parsley and what else? Oregano, parsley, and some tarragon. If you already have these three different spices, you can easily grind them together either in a coffee grinder or in a spice grinder, and you can create your own Italian seasoning. So it's really great. It's really great. It gives you a lot of diversity and creativity in creating your spice blends. Okay. So let's talk about packaged and processed foods. So, like I mentioned earlier, anything other than whole food is considered processed. So that really changes like the idea of when I learned that, it really changed the way I saw what processed food was because I always thought like, oh, like eating at McDonald's or things that come out of a package, things that come out of a box, that's considered processed foods. But technically, anything that's not in whole form is considered processed. So if you're making your own tomato sauce out of organic tomatoes on the vine, the minute you cut it and you stew it and you add salt and your seasoning, parsley and oregano to it, it becomes a processed thing, right? So It's so processed foods don't necessarily mean make it a bad thing. There's a lot of great and healthy processed foods, and there are also not good processed foods. So this is where it's really important to read the labels and the nutritional facts. I like to read the label per serving on the nutritional facts section, and what I try to look at are for these. So I want to make sure that for per serving, it's as close to as possible when it comes to sodium, 200 milligrams. Okay. And when it comes to added sugar, 5 grams of added sugar or 1.5 grams of saturated fat. So that's where it makes everything like interesting, right? Like something could be unhealthy for you, but actually is very healthy for you. Um, some things that you think are not healthy, you'd be surprised that it's not bad or they think are really healthy, but because their sodium, um, per, the serving per sodium is really high, may not be necessarily the best thing for you. So um, I always like to say it's always best to just start from the scratch and start with the source. You know, cooking your own meals, the flavor is better. You understand what's in your foods. You know how long it's been cooked, where it's been cooked, and how it's been cooked. All that stuff is very important, and that's what like these pantry staples are all about. You want to have these great pantry staples. So as you start to cook and you start to eat, you know, you don't have to think and be like, oh, you know, like, is this healthy for me? Or like, um, or I thought I was eating right, but you know, something just doesn't feel right. It could just be, you know, the staples in the things that are in your pantry could be not so good for you. Okay. And again, with the packaged and the processed foods, you know, sometimes like things like if you get a really great ketchup, you know, ketchup some people say is horrible for you, but if you, again, going back to reading the nutritional value label, the ketchup that you have may be perfect and great and healthy, you know, or like the cookies that you have in your pantry. You know, read your nutritional facts labels, you know, read the label ingredients and start to understand the foods that you're eating and putting into your body. Okay. So I added a list of seasonal produce. Okay. Things that you should be, now that you know what you stock your pantry with, you know, what about your refrigerator in your kitchen, the rest of your kitchen? So spring is upon us. And on the left, we have a list of all the seasonal produce in spring: apples, apricots, asparagus, avocados, bananas, broccoli. What's really great and important about eating things that are seasonal is that this is the time that they are at their peak, meaning at the peak, the most nutritional availability. Okay, and this is like also, um, and it also comes to like where you are locally, right? This is based off of the USDA, and it's from where to source things in the US. So not all of these may be 100% local, but you know it's not coming from around the world and shipped, you know, in containers and picked and shipped and, you know, stored in a cellar for how long, God knows how long. But you know that they are fresh. In the summer, the list gets a little bit gets longer just because naturally it's summer and it's, you know, things are harvesting and blooming and yummy to pick now. So what I like to do is I like to go to the farmers markets to get my nice seasonal produce. A lot of farmers markets, the farmers at the markets, they may not be um, quote unquote organic, but they are most likely having, you know, they most likely are practicing organic ways of harvesting um, the fruits and vegetables. And you know exactly where it's from. And one of the great things again from buying things that are seasonal is that they actually last longer. So you could buy apples and you're asking yourself, oh, when I buy apples in the wintertime, they only last in my kitchen for like, I don't know, 2 weeks or 1 week. But when I buy apples from my local farmer, you know, you know, I've noticed that this apple has lasted in my kitchen for 3 weeks. It's because it was literally picked off the tree and straight onto the market. Okay, so let's talk about some hidden toxicities, kitchen toxicities. Now that you know what to put in your pantry and how to eat, you know, how to stock to make eating decisions easy for you, let's talk about what how to spring clean the rest of the kitchen. And so, hidden kitchen toxicities. As we can unknowingly introduce heavy metals and chemicals into our bodies through food containers, beverages, and kitchen tools. Okay, so some have a list of heavy chemicals and heavy metals. So with heavy metals that can be easily found in the kitchen are aluminum, tin, copper, and mercury. Okay. And with chemicals, plastic, chlorine, PFOAs, PTFEs, also known as Teflon, those are also chemicals. So I want to note that PFOAs and PTFE, Teflon, you want to make sure that your pots and pans that are non-stick were purchased after 2013. If you've got some pots and pans that you've been holding on to for a while, you know, they're definitely made to last. But the Teflon made with prior to 2013 are extremely toxic. So you want to go ahead and update that if that's the case for you. Okay. So let's talk about heavy metal toxicity. Basically, toxic metals mimic the structure of other minerals our body uses. When healthy minerals are not available, our body absorbs toxic metals in its place. So studies have shown that, aluminum toxicity, for example, contributes to diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, breast cancer, and renal failure. When we talked about making sure that we're foods that are nutritionally available and dense, it's the same thing. That's why we don't eat, like, eating white refined sugar or even ingest genetically modified oils can be harmful to us. Our body doesn't really know what to do with it, and it's the same thing when we start introducing heavy metals. Our bodies are made to absorb minerals. Metals are minerals, and if we're but it's not necessarily like aluminum, tin, these copper. Um, they're not always found in food, and because of how how the food industry has evolved in the last 50, 60 years, they now are in foods. So where do you get them in foods? Where do you get them in your kitchen? So when you're cooking or baking with foil, once your food is baked and surrounded in foil, the heat releases the aluminum toxicity into your food. Soda cans, not just Coke or pop, but now soda cans and something as healthy as seltzer water. That's also a way of aluminum leaching into the liquids that we're drinking. Canned foods, that's an easy one, right? Um, if you think about, like, people who have those crazy bunkers and how they store canned foods because they last forever. Yeah, the food in there will last forever, but you have to wonder, as the food and the liquid is sitting in the tin and cans, the metals are leaching into the food. And when we eat them, we ingest them. Aluminum pots and pans. So if you have a stick pan that you purchased after 2013, okay, which is safe, if you have a scratch in it, the bottom underneath layer that actually heats your pan up is made out of aluminum. So if there's a scratch in any of your non-stick pans, you want to go ahead and make sure to give it a toss, because that's how aluminum is leaching into everything you cook with that pan or pot. Baking sheets. Um, Baking sheets, when you're baking cookies, baking loaves, um, baking or roasting your vegetables, the aluminum in the baking sheet, again, once it's heated, it's released into the foods that you're baking on. So that's how we have some hidden aluminum toxicity, tin toxicity, and heavy metal toxicity in our kitchen. So underneath, I have a website link to household products, and that gives you a list of metal items in your kitchen that could be giving you heavy metal toxicity or chemical toxicity. Okay. The next is chemicals. Okay, so plastic acts as an endocrine and neuroendocrine disruptor. This possibly contributing to infertility, some reproductive cancers, metabolic disorders such as PCOS. So plastics that we, especially PBAs, um, they they're known to disrupt your endocrine system, and your endocrine system is where our hormones are stored. Um, our hormone system, like how we manage our hormones. So, think about all the water bottles that you've been drinking. Slowly, these plastics touching into our water and introduced into our bodies and introduced into our endocrine system. Okay, another common chemical toxicity that we can find in the kitchen is chlorine, bleach. Okay. Chlorine can cause damage to the eyes, lungs, and throat. Long-term chlorine exposure can, oh, sorry, it's a typo, can lead to lung and pulmonary edema. So you want to be careful. Chlorine is a gas. Once it's the smell of chlorine, you smell it, it already enters your body. Similar to plastic, plastic is a chemical. It's not a material, but it's actually a chemical. When you heat it, it changes and it's emitting into our food to how the metal toxicity is working. So, what you want to look for and avoid using are plastic Tupperware, Saran wrap, plastic cups, plastic utensils, plastic straws, water bottles, bleach, tap water, Ziploc bags. Those are all sources of chemical toxicity. Okay. Um, it's tough because plastic is in everything around us. And it is something that is so easy. It's so easy. Everything is made out of plastic because plastic is, really accessible. But we want plastic in the things that are like where it should be, and it shouldn't be in our bodies. Okay. So, what are some alternatives to use instead? Okay, so Ingrid, now that I drink my seltzer, and I need to drink seltzer, and I like to drink it out of, I have my Pellegrino that I drink out of, or I drink my, um, or I need to bake because I love to bake. So there are absolutely, please continue to do all the things you do, but there are great alternatives and ways to prevent your bodies from absorbing these heavy metals and chemicals. So we want to go ahead and use glass. You can use glass for baking. You can use glass Pyrex for storing. So if you bake with the glass, Pyrex makes these great glass, kind of like glass for casseroles. That you can also use them for storage. So that already helps with your aluminum and your chemical toxicity. Stainless steel is another great option. I love using stainless steel pots and pans. You can also get baking sheets made out of stainless steel. If you are still using a baking sheet made out of aluminum, an easy way to prevent aluminum toxicity into your foods is using parchment paper, simply creating a barrier from the aluminum into your food. Parchment paper is great for baking. Ceramic is another great baking tool and cooking tool. Cast iron is another great baking and cooking option. Silicone cups, the silicone pouches that you get. Those are stronger and are PBA free. So that's a great option for those who love to use Ziploc bags and find carrying Pyrex glass is heavier. Oh, I also forgot to mention that there's stainless steel containers, food containers that are really great too. Bamboo is another great option. Sometimes even check your cutting board. Are you using a plastic cutting board? If you are, a great alternative is a bamboo one. Bamboo straws, bamboo utensils, bamboo bowls. Um, in terms of cleaning agents, distilled vinegar is a great cleaning option. Borax is another cleaning option that's really good, and wax paper. So if you are, it's hard to go out and get all these things, especially now. Um, now, so things like if you have Tupperware or Ziploc bags that you're storing your foods in, a great option is to go ahead and line your Ziploc bag and even your plastic Tupperware with either parchment paper or wax paper or even a paper towel, anything to block the transmission of like the actual food and plastic contact. So that, again, the idea of creating a barrier will help with eliminating or reducing chemical toxicities. Okay, so we mentioned earlier that chlorine tap water is where we can also find some heavy chemicals and also some heavy metals. So here's a list of some water filters that'll be great that helps clean the water that you're drinking. So Zero Water is a great brand. Brita is a great brand. Pure Water is a great brand. All these three are easily available at a CVS, a Walgreens, Dwayne Reed, even the supermarkets. I think like Costco even sells them now. And Berkey, Berkey's like a great water filter system. Cleaning agents. So you're saying, Ingrid, I love to clean with bleach. I know I can kill everything with bleach. You're telling me I can't use bleach anymore. So I've given a list of great non-toxic cleaner brands: Seventh Generation, Methods, Ecos, Bonami, Salsuds, Mrs. Myers. These are all great toxic-free cleaners. And for those of you, if you can't go out right now, especially in this day and age, going to the supermarket and buying all these things may be too much. Go ahead and check in your own pantry, and in your own medicine cabinet. You can make a DIY all-purpose cleaner. So what you want to do is grab a big glass spray bottle, and you want to go ahead and do 3/4 cups of hydrogen peroxide, half a cup of distilled white vinegar, 1 teaspoon of unscented Castile soap, something like Dr. Bronner's or Salsuds. And then this is optional, 10 drops of tea tree oil, 20 drops of lavender oil, but you definitely want to go ahead and add the 2 cups of water. Okay, so that's an easy way of making your all-purpose cleaner that's non-toxic. So, I added this because I realized, they planned this a month ago to do. Going to the supermarket or going on Amazon was easy and simple, and it was just an easy to do. And now it's, as we have our stay-at-home orders from our governors and the federal government, um, it's not always that easy to go out and get fresh food, and it's not so easy to get healthy food. So I listed, these are more New York based, some local CSA food deliveries. These are some companies that are doing a great job continuing to deliver food straight to your door, and also know it's local. So Local Roots, the top one is it is a company that coordinates with local farms, and it creates a digital CSA. So normally CSAs are in your neighborhood, and you go to the church or a bar or a restaurant to pick up your weekly or bi-weekly farmer hand-picked produce. So Local Roots is a new company that actually delivers it straight to your door. They have great options. They have weekly, bi-weekly deliveries, vegetarian or veggie and meat, and also like a family of 2 to a family of 4 to 6. There's also Natura, which is another great local CSA app. Natura, I believe it only works in New York, California, and London, but it's another great place where you can access CSAs that are delivering. Rustic Roots is another one. Farm Share. I added 2 Walden Local Meats. Crowd Cow, if you are looking to source some great meats. And if you just need some other foods, just like basic, like we said, baking soda and flour, gluten-free pastas. Belder Specialty Foods. This is normally offered to restaurants, and they sell in wholesale. But due to COVID-19 pandemic, they are doing home deliveries and opening their warehouse to the public. The Chef's Warehouse is another one similar. So again, those last 2 usually cater to restaurants, but because of the pandemic, they have a lot of food and they're doing free deliveries. Okay. Um, and you're also welcome to look online if you just Google local CSAs or CSAs near me, um, or CSAs delivering now. You'll get a list of some really great CSAs, food sources. So that's pretty much the end of the workshop. Thank you for joining on Facebook Live. Thanks for bearing with me on my first Facebook Live stream. If you want a copy of this slideshow presentation, please, you're welcome to email me at ingrid@healingartsnyc.com. If you have any questions, again, I love questions. Please go ahead and email me. And I'd love to connect with you and help you with your nutritional needs. Another thing that I do offer at Healing Arts is nutritional consultations. This is something that we can easily do over the phone, and it is do 1 hour to half an hour consultations. So within a consultation, I'll ask you to fill out a food diary, food and mood journal for up to 5 days, and I'll have you answer some basic questions. And from there, I'll go ahead and analyze what some of your nutritional deficiencies are, or how do we look at what are some best ways to eat and when to eat to actually help fuel your body and your lifestyle, and any other things that come up that you have questions about. How to, maybe you may have um, a sensitivity to something that you don't even realize, or maybe you realize, or it could be something as simple as you just need to, as we're looking at food journal, that you really need to drink more water to get you through the day. So I'd love to connect with you in that way. So again, feel free to email me. All right, go ahead and get out of this and see if I'm still streaming, and see if I have any questions. Oh, hi guys. Hi. Okay. Sorry guys. I just saw your questions because I couldn't share my screen. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can. I don't know if you can see me. I'm going to